Football's such a weird sport where you can go back and look at some small things that at the time didn't seem like a huge deal, but in hindsight maybe changed the whole outcome of the season. And one of those little moments was right here in a Week 5 game with the Chiefs playing the Raiders. This was the situation. It's a 3rd down and 1. There's 51 seconds left. The Raiders are out of timeouts, but they're close to field goal range. Only down a point. You definitely have a chance to pull off the upset for a 1-3 team. Maybe get back into it, get into the playoff race, but, as we know now, would not happen. But at the time, that's what we were thinking. Derek Carr is going to take the snap. He is going to throw one up to Adams, who appears to make the catch in bounds. It was ruled on the field that he made the catch in bounds, but after further review, it was considered incomplete, and, it's the right call, I think. You see this angle, it feels like he was bobbling it a little bit, and by the time he finally held on, that's before, he did eventually step out of bounds, so while he did get both feet in bounds, he didn't quite have possession when he did the toe tap, is what the ruling was. It feels like a fine ruling to me. I have no issue with it, but he was so close, right? Adams nearly had it, and I do wonder if Adams does make that catch, they're now in a position where they would have been in the outside of field goal range right away and would have had, time to potentially make it an easier field goal. Very real chance that they win the football game. So let's just assume that if he makes the catch, they do win the football game. What ended up happening was Carr would, on this play, he would throw one up. There was some contact, but it was ruled incidental contact, so no penalty. That was the game. The Raiders lose, the Chiefs win. But what if it didn't happen that way? Well, then what happens? Well, then the Chiefs are 13-4, meaning this is what the standings would have looked like in the AFC. The Bills, who played one less game than Kansas City, would have a higher win percentage and therefore would be the 1 seed. The Chiefs would fall to the 2 seed. Bengals would still be 3 seed and everything else would still be the same. So in round 1, most of the games would still be the exact same. The Jaguars would have had to come back against the Chargers. The Bengals and Ravens would have had their wild game. Now, the Chiefs would have had to play the Dolphins. In fact, this is what the schedule for the Chiefs, if they were to go on to the AFC Championship game, would have looked like, which we assume they would have. They would first have to play the Dolphins, which I think is fair to say that they probably would have beaten the Dolphins, given how banged up the Dolphins were at the time. Then they would have had to play the Cincinnati Bengals, who, they barely beat in the conference championship game. Maybe you could make the argument that now in this scenario, the Chiefs would be, since they don't have the benefit of having an extra bye week, maybe they're not quite as rested, maybe that's the difference. It's possible. But if we assume that they win that game, then they would have had to play the Buffalo Bills, who now at this point, the Buffalo Bills have an extra bye week. I'm assuming the Bills would have beaten Jacksonville. And while there's been a lot of people have turned on Buffalo after they got crushed by Cincinnati, but I think several things are worth noting. The Bills did beat the Chiefs this season. The game's now going to be played in Buffalo. It's not going to be played in Kansas City because the Bills have the 1 seed in this scenario. Although maybe it would have been I suppose perhaps with this whole shenanigans of the game, extra game not happening, maybe you have a scenario where this is a neutral site. I'm not sure exactly what would have happened there, but regardless. The other thing worth noting is how banged up those receivers for Kansas City were after the Cincinnati game. If that still happens, they don't get an extra week to prepare, and there's a very real chance that they aren't able to go, and maybe they do lose to Buffalo. And even if they don't, maybe not being quite as well rested as Philadelphia in what was such a close game, maybe that was the difference. There's a very real chance that the Chiefs could have lost this game and could have not even made the Super Bowl. And then are we talking about an Eagles Super Bowl victory? Maybe we're talking about a Buffalo Bills Super Bowl victory. It's actually not that crazy you can talk yourself into it for sure. At the end of the day, these are just fun thought experiments for me, how everything, hangs on a single thread, and it's a game of inches, but at the end of the day, Chiefs won, and there will be no going back in time and changing stuff. Just kind of an interesting thought experiment. I think. I enjoy doing this. But what do you guys think? Do you think that if Davante Adams catches that football, do the Chiefs still win the Super Bowl? It's kind of crazy to think about it that way, but might be the way it worked. Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.